We're about 48 hours from the trade deadline, which ends at 3 Eastern time on Thursday. Already breaking news, fast and furious. And let's start right there with senior NBA insider Charania, who's been a very busy man today. A little over an hour ago, breaking news on a trade. Shams, what do you have?
Hannah, so this is the first blockbuster of NBA trade deadline week. The Memphis Grizzlies have traded former Defensive Player of the Year Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Utah Jazz for a package of players that includes Walter Clayton Jr. and 3 first-round draft picks. And so the Jazz here, let's start with them. They're making a major swing in the Western Conference. Jaren Jackson now adds to a core of Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Walker Kessler. So this is a Jazz team that now Austin Ainge, their new head of basketball operations, Danny Ainge, their CEO, Ryan Smith, their owner. This is a big swing for them in the Western Conference as they try to turn the page and compete with some young talent. But the Grizzlies are now signaling a full rebuild around promising young players like Cedric Coward, like a Zach Edey, and they now have about a dozen first-round draft picks over the next 7 years that ties them with Oklahoma City and Brooklyn. And they also created a $28.8 million trade player exception. That's the largest in NBA history. So we saw Desmond Bane traded last offseason. Jaren Jackson Jr. now to start the trade deadline. And Ja Morant is waiting in the wings potentially as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about really in the run-up to this deal. You mentioned all those first-round picks. That's 7 now from this trade for Jackson and Desmond Bane. All right, we'll get back to you in a sec, Shams. Full house here. We have Wendy, we have Bobby Marks, we have Chiney, we have Iman Shumpert. Hey, everybody, y'all ready?
Let's go.
All right, let's go. Wendy, what are your thoughts about this deal?
Okay, Jaren Jackson was a player who was interested. A lot of teams were interested in here, and this is what they call in the business pre-agency. He has 4 years and $200 million left on his contract. The Jazz are taking that contract in and paying dearly for it, but now this sort of becomes their free agent move that they would have done with salary cap space next summer. And Lauri Markkanen, now you may say he's a 7-footer. How does this work? Lauri Markkanen can play small forward. In fact, when he started doing that in Cleveland as a 7-foot small forward, it sort of revitalized his career. I would believe that the Jazz would intend to re-sign Walker Kessler and have a giant, basically 3 7-footer front line with Jaren Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, and I suspect they will still be tanking to make sure they get the draft pick. They have the draft pick, and that is going to be the foundation of their rebuild.
Bobby, what do you think?
You know what? I go back to last January when Utah made a trade with Phoenix, under the radar trade. They basically took a quality over quantity approach. They traded 3 of their lesser firsts, and guess what they got? A 2031 unprotected first from Phoenix. And you know what happened? That trade got it over with that trade pick, they got over the finish line getting Jackson Jr. here. 3 first-round picks go to Memphis, as you mentioned, 12 over the next 7 years. Clearly a sign for this Grizzlies team that's rebuilding. And I give Utah credit. I mean, to go out there and make this type of deal, they wouldn't have been able to go out and get Jaren Jackson Jr. in free agency.
Chiney?
I give them more than credit. I have officially taken note of the Utah Jazz. No more rebuilding. Donovan Mitchell left in 2021, 2022 after that season. It took 4 years in the trenches, and now it looks like they're trying to climb their way out. And what I've noticed is that front line, because in the Western Conference, if you want to go to an NBA Finals, you have to go through Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama, Alperen Şengün, Rudy Gobert. So you need to have a stout front line, and I like the one that they've built or are building for the future.
Yeah, I love it. My favorite thing on paper to look at is Keontae George and Jaren Jackson together. You know, guys, I'm a fan of, at the end of the game, what are you guys going to do? I really like my chances with those two making decision-making. You got your Jamal Murrays and your Jokic's, and they just fit into that DNA. You got your guys that can come off pick and rolls and make you pay. It's hard to deal with at the end of games. I now like it for the future, and I'm not even mad at the rebuilding opportunity that the Grizzlies have here. I like what they're doing, too. We'll just see what happens with Ja Morant.
Yeah. More on Ja Morant. So what potentially does this mean?
So because, as you mentioned, they got 7 first-round picks for Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson. As I talked to executives around the league, they think that this changes what they can expect back in a Ja Morant trade. Instead of trying to trade Ja for as much value as they can, which frankly, there's not as much value for Ja. That's why Bane and the Jackson have been traded first. They now, executives believe, can take on salary because they've offloaded this $200 million that they were owed to Jackson. They can sort of use Ja as a trade piece to balance out salary, take back bad money and receive assets for that. So I think they can have sort of fresh discussions with John Morant in trade negotiations, and that's, I think, why they did Jaren Jackson first to open that up between now and Thursday afternoon.
In the meantime, he's been injured. He hasn't been playing. There was another trade that has happened within the last hour, a 3-team deal. What can you tell us about that?
Guys, a 3-team deal, Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit. So Detroit, let's start with them, the best team in the Eastern Conference. They're getting a sharpshooter, Kevin Huerter, as well as Dario Saric, but that's just salary filler in this deal. The Bulls are getting Jaden Ivey. He's going to be up for a new contract this offseason, and so he now joins this group of guard players with Josh Giddey, brings some youth, obviously throws Kobe White's future. He's going to be a free agent, throws his future a little bit in peril with the Bulls, and let's see where he lands at this NBA trade deadline. But listen, Minnesota is very interesting in all this. They essentially dump Mike Conley Jr.'s salary onto Chicago here in this 3-team deal. They end up also sending a pick swap to Detroit to help facilitate this. But this now opens up $24 million. Bobby Marks can do the math, about $24 million in tax and salary savings. It creates a roster spot for them. We know they are pursuing a star out of Milwaukee this week, so it does create a little bit of flexibility as they try to do that.
Yeah, Bobby, so their luxury tax bill drops from $24 million to $3.8 million. So explain now what are they able to do?
Yeah, there's that component, and now they drop over under the dreaded apron.
They're under the first apron,
ability
right?
to take back more money in a deal here, and I think that's kind of sets the stage up for maybe something bigger. I think it's interesting that in 2 years in a row, Hannah, we've seen the top team in the Eastern Conference, Cleveland last year with DeAndre Hunter, and now Detroit, go out and make a trade because they're not content with their roster. We talked about it in the pre-production meeting. What did Detroit need? Perimeter shooting, 21st in the NBA. Kevin Huerter, come on down. That gives them certainly a nice around the margins type move.
So this is a pre-agency move by the Bulls because they are getting Jaden Ivey, a restricted free agent. I would expect them to sign him later this summer. Obviously Kevin Huerter is going to shoot for Detroit. I would now look, Shams mentioned Kobe White. You just threw a pass there. Kobe White, I think, could be on the move in a pre-agency move by whoever acquires Kobe White. And Kobe White is a guy who is a scorer, a spark plug, can start, can come off the bench. It would not surprise me if he ends up at a contender because his price point is kind of low. For Minnesota, this is a hedge, okay? On one hand, they save a bunch of money, okay? Let's not ignore that they paid on this deal to save a bunch of money. And if it helps them get Giannis, great. But if it doesn't help them get Giannis, they saved a bunch of money, which is also something that's a factor there.
But what about the Kobe White of it all? That's intriguing.
I've seen the Bulls play a ton, and when I look at how it goes, I kind of saw him being the odd man out eventually anyway. It's not his fault. His game is his game. It's not like it's no value to his game. It's just when you talk about a rebuilding process or you talk about heading into a new direction, I don't see, what the small guard would do if you're going to try and blossom with the other guys you have on your roster. Letting go of Huerter, I don't think they were going to do much with him anyway. I'm excited to see the Bulls get better and better. That's my hometown team. So
yeah, who else
I got
is
to play
excited?
for other. Yeah, I need them to be okay, and I'm excited to see what they're doing.
Jaden's mom is excited. Niele Ivey, she coaches at Notre Dame, right down the road.
Man.
She's going to be at all those home games.
Hey.
How do you like this?
A couple of breakout moments. I would even say like seasons for Kobe White. But when you are ninth in the East, when you're in the middle of the pack in the NBA, you had time to sort of audition for a greater opportunity. And I do think when you see enough of a sample size, you make a decision. But my eyes are honestly on Detroit for Bobby's point of view. This is a team that's going for it. And I love that. The East has not really proven any other contenders. The Knicks are hot right now, but it's been up and down. The Sixers, they have their own adversity given Paul George. Like right now, they're starting to see, like, if we beef up this roster, we are going for it right now. They will have to build through experience in the postseason, but I like the moves that they're making. Let
me just say two things. One, I want to see what Minnesota does guard-wise. Assuming they don't get Giannis, they could have gotten Kobe White in this trade. And they need help at the guard position. So I want to watch what Minnesota does between now and Thursday, and I'm sure Ann Edwards does too. Secondly, Mike Conley going to Chicago, this is a potential buyout situation. I'm not sure what Conley. I don't think Conley can play a big role in the team, but this is a guy every team in the league would want. He could get bought out in a contender if they fit the criterion, which is another story for another day. Mike Conley could join a contender in the next couple of weeks.
I have just like one thought. How
Sure.
urgent are the Minnesota Timberwolves right now? Because they have Anthony Edwards, 24.
Well, they're trying to get Giannis.
You know,
I mean, that's pretty urgent.
We know that. But like, if that does, if that
like,
falls
what's plan
short,
B?
there are options
Well,
right now.
if you're, I don't want to overreact on Tuesday when the deadline is Thursday, but if you come out of this week and Minnesota's move is just to save money,
yeah,
they're going to have to answer to Ant on that. But it's just Tuesday,
Okay.
so let's
All right.
let's just wait.
I'm on fire. It's 88 over here.